Our panel is going to be a little bit different, maybe as you would have expected or hoped. The title of our panel, as everyone knows, is Therapeutic, Not Therapy, the Transformative Impact of P4C Hawai'i. We're going to kind of introduce ourselves. If you haven't met me before, I'm Ben Lukey. I'm the Associate Director of the Hawai'i Academy here at UH Manoa. And yeah, so do stuff. Introduce our illustrious director.
Dr. J, introduce yourself.
Exactly.
Hi, I'm Dr. J. The name I got from third graders over 30 years ago. Because Jackson was too hard to remember. So they said, can we call you Dr. J? And I thought, bingo, so I'm Dr. J.
Hi everybody, I'm Amber Moncayao. My home is actually in the College of Education, but I get the privilege of being the Director of Curriculum and Research at the Hawai'i Academy for Philosophy and Ethics in Education. And I also serve as a bridge between Honolulu School, which is a 106-year-old progressive school located here in Honolulu, and it's all under this larger umbrella of progressive education. So glad to be here.
Okay, and I'm Toby. Thanks to all of you for coming. Yeah, I also specialize in P4C up here at the Hawai'i Academy, and I've also had a career in counseling in addition to philosophy. And I guess my title is Director of Community Outreach, and I also brought a couple of our P4C students who I'll let introduce themselves.
I'm Sarah.
I'm Sam.
So one of the unique things about the Hawai'i Academy for folks that don't know is that we span not only different colleges of the university, College of Art and Languages and Letters, College of Education. We have graduate students from College of Social Sciences, but we also have team members that are around the world and from local schools. So we're going to do first a kind of a brief intro. If anybody is new to P4C or to P4C Hawai'i, we're going to kind of do a very quick introduction. I mean, there's a lot more research published. If you want to learn more about P4C, please stay after. We can definitely share some more resources. But then what we really want to highlight today is some of these case studies. That's going to be a big chunk of today. We're going to have a lot of kind of interactive time. And then at the end, we get to hear from Tom, his kind of big thoughts. Okay, so again, this is taken from the title of our panel, right? Philosophy, therapeutic, but not therapy. This is a topic that came up yesterday in the panel, late afternoon. So what I'd like to do is just take 1 to 2 minutes, turn to a neighbor, and think about this phrase. When you think about philosophy, do you think about it as therapeutic? Do you think about it as therapy? Do you think about it as a neither, both? Just kind of, this is what we often do in classes, get some thinking warmed up. So just, everybody can talk at once. Just turn to the neighbor, take a couple minutes, share your thoughts.
Yeah, by the way,
I always feel so much better if I go to the I walk out feeling like it's like I just exercised.
I probably have it here.
Well, it's great.
But anyway,
Some people doing
well,
so yeah, I guess it's like why therapy? It's therapeutic. What's the difference between something therapeutic? Why is it public? So when I think of therapy, I think of like you go to a session, you sit down with one person. I was, but I don't have to pay for it. Anyway, yeah.
There we go. So, I'm not the master that Nanette is, right? Nanette is one of our P4C teachers, teaches 3rd grade this year. But those of you that got to see her class knows that she is the master of like reining back chaos, right? There's this wonderful dynamic in a classroom where everybody's there and they're having fun and blast, and okay, we focus, and then fun and then focus. And so we're gonna model a little bit of that today. We're not gonna have you kind of share out quite yet, but we wanted to get people just in their own thinking about this idea as we now explore philosophy from the perspective of P4C Hawaii, and then as we explore into this idea of therapeutic and therapy.
Yeah. So how many people are coming in here with a framework of a little bit of an understanding of philosophy for children? It's the Philosophy for Children fan club. So loosely, philosophy for children is an approach to teaching and learning that's defined by a conceptual framework, and we talk about 4 pillars being community, inquiry, philosophy, and reflection, and an accompanying set of activities. So when we talk about each of these 4 pillars, they come with a range of research and scholarship that's supporting them. So community is really grounded in the work of John Dewey and talking about self-directed inquiry and learning as a social act that we do in community with one another, extending through constructivism and Vygotsky, and that this is the foundation of learning. We've also got Matt Littman over there in the corner, who coined the term the community of inquiry and the founder of Philosophy for Children, and really building on this idea that thinking has to be done in a community in order for thinking to be as it exists in the world around us, if we're looking in a school setting. Also, when we talk about inquiry, that it's self-directed, that it's self-initiated, that it's co-inquiry, that students and teachers are thinking together alongside one another. When we talk about reflection, we talk about being reflective practitioners in terms of the world and the way that we reflect on the world in order to change the world. A lot of what Paulo Freire wrote about in Pedagogy of the Oppressed, and also the tools of reflection. For example, things like metacognition that Costa wrote about when he's talking about habits of mind. And in our context here in Hawaii, when all of those are bound together, community, inquiry, reflection, we've also got a culturally responsive, multicultural, social justice aim to the work that we're doing, and that it really matters who the folks are that are in our community and all of the diverse backgrounds that they're coming from. When we talk about philosophy, we like to distinguish between big P and little p philosophy, big P being the canon, and little p being the activity of philosophy, and Tom is going to unpack this a lot more later on in the presentation today. But when we think about philosophy as an activity, it becomes a way for students and teachers of any age group to engage with content in a variety of learning contexts. And when we talk about engage, it means asking questions that you care about and wonder about, that you're making connections between content and your lived experience outside the world, and also thinking about the social implications of the thinking that we do together. In addition to having a conceptual framework and a philosophy, there's also activities that we use to translate our philosophy into practice. And so some of the hallmark activities of Philosophy for Children Hawaii is starting by building intellectual safety in our classrooms, unpacking what this means with our students, and creating a framework that you feel like you're socially, emotionally, and intellectually safe to ask any question or state any point of view as long as you're being respectful of everyone in the room. We create something called a community ball, which Ben has brought one here with us today. This helps to change the power dynamic in the classroom, so it's not the teacher who holds all the power, but the students are able to choose who goes next in the dialogue and the thinking with one another. It has rules. Only the person with the ball is the speaker. The person with the ball chooses who speaks next. And you always have the right to say that you need more time to think. To help us dig deep and use the tools that philosophers use to extend their thinking, we use something called the Good Thinkers Toolkit, where we teach kids about assumptions and reasons, examples, counterexamples. Is what's being said true? What are the implications if it is true? And these become tools for them to ask questions and make philosophical moves in our inquiries together. To structure our community of inquiry, we use a process that Tom coined plain vanilla, building on Matt Littman's work. And in this process, all the students in the classroom, including the teacher, generate a question, something that they're curious thinking about and wondering about with one another. We list all of the questions. The children get a vote, they get votes. And the question with the most votes becomes the focus of the inquiry. And then that person gets to start the inquiry, and then we use our tools to help and build and think with one another. We use magic words to help facilitate. So like, I don't understand what you're saying. Could you repeat that one more time? Could you clarify what you're saying? And it becomes a fun way for elementary through high school in order to help them become the facilitators of the inquiry. And then we also have tools for evaluating the community of inquiry. So we look at how we're doing as a community, how's our listening, how's our intellectual safety, what's our participation like, and then how are we doing in our inquiry? Did we scratch beneath the surface of the topic? Did we use the Good Thinkers Toolkit to help us do that? Did we learn something new? What new questions have emerged? Am I more confused? But we do this at the end of every inquiry with the students as a way to have an element of metacognition and be self-corrective and move forward the next time that we have an inquiry with one another. And again, none of these are prescriptive. If anybody has the opportunity to go see the classrooms that are practicing philosophy for children, we like to give teachers the framework, but then they play around and make it their own depending on who the kids are in their particular school or their teaching style. And it's just meant to be tools that they can use to help them extend the activity of philosophy. So in addition to the conceptual framework, the activities or strategies that teachers can use, we also talk a lot about that there has to be particular dispositions that teachers have if they're going to be practicing this in their classroom. And we're calling this the Philosophers' Pedagogy. And it has 6 commitments. Number 1, as a teacher, you need to be willing to live the examined life yourself. Number 2, to approach education as a shared activity between teacher and student, that it's a give and take, not one person necessarily knows more than the other. When we think about content, a lot of times typically in a traditional classroom, the content is found in a textbook or the teacher's materials, but we're looking at content as the teacher and the learner's beliefs, the teacher and the learner's experiences, as well as the subjective and the standards and the books and all the things that we're bringing to the classroom. We also are borrowing from John Dewey in Democracy and Education and looking at philosophy as the general theory of education that's grounding everything that we do in the classroom. We use the tools to make philosophy a living classroom practice. And I think above all, in the time period that we're living in right now and the oppressive structures in our education system, we have to be willing to challenge contemporary measures of assessment, standardized testing, that's not necessarily looking for all of the qualities that we are in terms of when we look at outcomes of what we're aiming to do with philosophy for children. If you want to learn more about this, there's a whole journal of educational perspectives dedicated to philosophy for children, and you can use that as a resource to learn more about the Philosophers' Pedagogy and some of the other things. And finally, over the years, we've been doing a lot of research about the impact of this. And so some of the main outcomes that we're seeing with using philosophy for children in schools is that we're seeing students and teachers that are exhibiting good judgment. We're having them report on and observe others being responsible and ethical community members. We're having them say that they now have tools for philosophical reflection, that they're more empathetic of other people that they're going to school with prior to these experiences, that they see learning as fun and joyous. This is something Dewey wrote a lot about. And also starting to see school as a transformative experience rather than a transactional or something that I have to do just in terms to get to a job. But really about helping me explore what does it mean to live a good life, to be a good human, find things that I want to pursue, my passions, and how can I be a fierce individual with my own ideas as well as know how to learn and think with other people. And if anybody is a fan of democracy, these are some of the key tools that we all need to live in a democratic society with one another. So that is just P4C in a nutshell, like the quickest version of it that you'll ever hear, possibly, but we wanted to make sure that everybody was coming from the same context as we start to dig into philosophy. Is it therapeutic but not therapy? And we've got some case studies from the various settings that we do philosophy for children in, and we're going to go through that process now with you.
So again, now that we got a little bit more, we're gonna, as Amber said, we're gonna share some, and we have some handouts. So I think I'll start off like every
Give a
2
partner.
people, exactly, and then.
And while he's passing this out, you might have seen on the intro slide that Chad Miller is one of our colleagues in the Hawai'i Academy, and unfortunately he's away at a family emergency. He was going to do a vignette called Philosophy Goes to High School, And it's still in your packet, but we're not gonna read it out loud together today, but we wanted to acknowledge, I don't know if we're acknowledging him by striking through the title of his name, but he's here, he's in your packet, we're just not gonna spend time talking and reading about it.
Then I got 2 extras if anybody. Alright.
I'm gonna digitize mine and I'll give the hard copy
Okay.
to whoever.
Okay, so Ben's gonna get us started.
Yes. So again, just for a little bit of explanation too, as I start, we're going to share these case studies in kind of the form of narratives. I think within each, there's a lot of philosophical content, but at least I'm not going to kind of explicitly speak to that, right? Like I'm going to trust we're going to be making those connections in our mind, and we'll have a chance to kind of talk and share about that. But we're going to focus right now on, in some sense, the narratives, right? And so when you deal with narratives, you take the narrative just as a story, right? As a case study. And so it's important to say that too, because the first one that I want to share is not so much about, like, I'm not endorsing this sentence, right? So I put it in quotes, right? I definitely want to be very clear that I don't think therapy sucks. I actually think therapy is actually a really good thing. But this sentence speaks to an experience, and it's that experience that I want to kind of unpack, right? So if you kind of, again, we wanted to provide these so people can kind of read along and look and kind of engage rather than just having to kind of listen. But just for context, right? So for those that don't know, I was working at, I still am working at Kailua High School as a philosopher in residence. This was approximately 4 years after working at the school, so knew many of the teachers and students quite well. P4C, I would say, was really flourishing at the high school in the way that Amber talked about. It was integrated into not just English language arts classes, ethnic studies and philosophy, visual arts, Japanese language and culture, health, which is part of health PE, a bunch of other kind of content courses across the curriculum. And so what that means is that the students had already started to develop a kind of culture, I think, of P4C and this type of dialogic inquiry. And I think then this story illustrates in some sense the depth that we tapped into. For those that were there yesterday afternoon, this was a topic that came up in the panel that Jessica and Mon were at. And one of the points Mon made yesterday is, look, these things are always there in life. Like, we can't help, I think Griffin shared a slide where things are burning around you and we just say, oh, it's fine. And you have moments where you acknowledge that. And this was one of those moments where a student took the risk, right? This comes from a 9th grade English language arts class. I was texting with the teacher to make sure I had certain details correct. And I used pseudonyms, so Mark is not his real name. But what was interesting is that this was just a regular freshman English class. And they did a plain vanilla where they put questions up. And Mark's question, I think as I put up there, was about why is it true that we can change the behavior of the people that we love, right? And it got the most votes, people not familiar, right? Everybody kind of goes up and puts votes, and that's the one we wanted to start with. And the first thing that we do is we turn the ball over to the person that created the question. They're like, why this question? What were you thinking about? And that's when it first started to open up, right? Mark shared, he wasn't a person that typically had his questions selected. Like, this is not a person who was kind of, top of the class in that kind of academic sense, but this was his time, right? He explained that his mother had recently passed away due to heart problems caused by drug addiction. It was likely an overdose. He shared that he and others in the family had tried to get her to stop doing drugs, and that there was a genuine bond. It wasn't that they were estranged. It wasn't that, there was a lot, I'm sure there was conflict, but there was a genuine love between them all, and that she couldn't stop. And so then he brought up the question whether love was a strong enough force to change someone's behavior, right? Especially in the face of other things. And so, like, it was clearly emotional, and everybody's feeling kind of like I'm feeling right now, like, oh, this is kind of scary. But immediately, hands went up, right? And as we continued to explore, as you read, students started sharing a variety of responses, and this also came up in yesterday afternoon panel, and it was that kind of magic ground, I think Claire Katz put it yesterday, between the kind of idiosyncratic personal. So people shared deeply personal experiences of other family members struggling, whether that was with addiction or other things that they couldn't get them to stop doing, and then the kind of profoundly maybe conceptual about, like, what is love, right? Are we in control of our own will? And so I put in, I didn't give a transcript, my memory's not that good. And I, wasn't gonna write everything down there, you were kind of too much in the moment, but some of the things that still stand out. And this was, this was more than 12 years ago, but as soon as I texted the high school teacher and asked about this, he was like, oh, and he gave his real name. And it's one of those things that you remember. So again, it was not an isolated problem. That's the first thing. A lot of other students were struggling with this. There was a lot of crying, right? But it wasn't crying, I think, I'm not sure quite how to describe it, but there was kind of connection through the crying. It wasn't self-pitying crying. There was also an intense intellectual searching. The students questioned many aspects of the topic. To what extent are we in control of our own choices and actions? What is love, and does it strengthen or weaken or change others? Why are we hurt by those who love and who love us? Is there such a thing as fate or destiny? That was a big topic that came up, was whether people are just fated or destined to die at a certain time. Or there are some outcomes that are unavoidable. And then, pulling back a little further, does the idea of fate, the fact that it might be someone's kind, lessen the suffering that we feel? And again, the kind of unique experience that's why it's seared into our memories was all these like amazing kind of questions and new facets of the inquiry that were grounded in this kind of intense emotional experience. And so I put it there at the end of that third bullet, right, or fourth. Students were allowed to be open in their grief, but this did not inhibit the philosophical intensity of the inquiry. In fact, it amplified it. And the adults, so myself, the classroom teacher, and there was another educational aide, kind of a one-on-one in the class as well, were kind of all just near tears or crying, but in awe of what was happening. And I think what made it unique is that none of us felt that we were going to try to, kind of take Toby's phrase, to try to sew people back together, right? Because it wasn't that we were ripping things open, it was an opening, and we weren't going to try to tie tidy bows around things and say we didn't have answers. And I think it was important that we didn't have answers. At the end, of course, we always did our reflection, and we did a thing that we often do, and I think particularly in tent sessions, that we just send it around the circle for people to share final thoughts. And the students, it was clear, really shared in what all of us had experienced together. They were also kind of in awe of what had happened. And this is where this panel comes from, or the title of this comes from. One young woman said the words that prompted, "This was like therapy, but therapy sucks." And I think where that was coming from her, is that, again, a lot of these students are dealing with things it's difficult to imagine, and are seeking therapy that is actively helping them to kind of sew together some of these wounds to get through life. But at a certain point too, it's helpful to know that we don't have to do sewing right now. We don't all have answers. That we, not just with one other person, but we can feel a sense of general philosophical inquiry and a shared sense of experience and suffering. And I don't see it as a condemnation of therapy. I think it was a realization that meaningful and emotionally relevant thinking could be done with a group of peers, and that not having answers did not mean that exploring the questions were fruitless. And I think about this, and I'll just, at the end of each of our panels, we're gonna let people kind of turn and talk. We're gonna do what we did at the beginning and let people kind of just immediately process. And some of the things I'm thinking about, you don't have to think about these specific things, but do you find the story in a narrative like inspiring or horrifying, right? Does academic philosophy suffer from disassociating itself from discourse that is often seen as the domain of therapists or spiritual leaders? And does philosophy offer anything that is not usually found in therapy? These are the questions I still wonder about. So, I think on time. Let's take a few minutes. I'll kind of read the volume level and kind of listen in. But again, turn, talk, just think together. And then when we're ready, I'll call people back and we'll go on. We'll share some out loud.
Okay. Did you find it horrifying? Yeah, I shouldn't have shown that. Maybe like the halfway point is like inspiration or my with children and really with families that it's even when horrible things that go on because the community is not processing sometimes finding a way to make sense of. Sometimes the bad part this is a bad way of putting it, but like you know how it's unfortunate that sometimes it goes like that as long as it's not quite there's like something there's no way by whatever is being defined ready to life it's to like I think you should there's something else going on there a lot of therapy, maybe in America especially, you're talking about it's geared towards like feeling better. Oh, it's a very and I think that a lot of therapy doesn't have like an outside criteria. There are certain tools you can need to step and especially with philosophy. You end up interested in checking against all the laws and thinking about it. It's like you ask yourself, what did it's and you think, oh, that is true. It's also that changes you in a way that really you feel like just exploring your own effective responses to things. Not quite. I don't know. I think we're unpacking what your thoughts were and feelings. It's more just like it's almost entirely. I thought that it's very introspective, but it doesn't have to do with like. It seems like you'll check yourself as artists and whether or not. Well, I actually did. And obviously, there's a lot of space. There's more space for that here, even if it's a lot of different perspectives. Or I had read this program. So I feel music. The bureaucracy but the results not just press the button. Yeah. I'm from Boston. Not just the nation, a little bit more like that. I agree with you. It comes to so I really didn't talk too much there. You think that you're larger right now? You think that like you're you think that could accomplish something like one of the things they do is invest in
There you go. So, if you haven't noticed, we're kind of doing it, right? But we're getting better. Like the first time we brought people back, it was like, well, what's going on? Like, Annette was on it, but now this time, by the end, everyone's gonna be really adjusted. So, I'm just curious. Again, I'm listening in. I kind of wish every panel gave us this much. So I'm curious to hear if people want to share kind of things that were talked about or discussed in your small group and your pairing, and we'll just use the community vault. Have maybe 3 to 5 people just kind of share out whatever they want to share from the kind of side conversation. If there's anybody who feels comfortable sharing.
I was thinking about question number 3, and I recall reading a book about a therapist, and he recounted many cases in the book, and I was very amazed by the way he presented the case and the questions he asked and the reasons he was asking the question. Very detailed, very organized, very systematic, and very impressive. And I was thinking, that's usually not the way I was talking to people in philosophical inquiry. Because I think for therapists, they have some protocols to follow, and they have certain interpretations about human behavior that's helping them to better cope with the case. But as philosophers, we are sort of so used to be thinking in the moment, focusing on the right now and the individual person as in his own situatedness.
Yeah.
So I would assume that even though I was really impressed by the science of therapy, but I'm thinking that philosophy has that openness to new situations, new contexts, and new something. Yeah, new possibilities. Uncertain, but magical in some sense. Yeah, thank you.
Anybody? So again, if you haven't done this before, you can raise your hand, and Jessica will get involved.
And you can speak to the group. You don't
Exactly,
have to speak up front.
Hi everybody, I'm Nanette Ganotisi from Waikiki School. I've been doing P4C since 2005. I've had the privilege of doing P4C with Tamara, Dr. Albertini's son, Peter Wolf, and also both of Ben's sons. And this is my daughter, Rose. So she was born into P4C whether she likes it or not. So Ben, you started your case study talking about texting the teacher and him or her, and they remember 12 years ago, this P4C. And so that one really hit deep for me because I truly remember all of our P4Cs. So I was talking to Rose and asking her, have you had those P4Cs where people just pour out their heart and they just share something so deep and so profound? And she said she hasn't. But me as a teacher from kindergarten through adult P4C, I've had countless. And the one that I'll never forget is a first grader, parents going through a divorce. And we used the song True Colors, Cyndi Lauper. And True Colors was getting them thinking. And then the little girl told her classmates, my parents are getting a divorce because my dad couldn't show his true colors. And those moments are what Dr. J calls spontaneous eloquence. We can't plan for it, we can't prepare, but they happen. And then when they do, they're just unforgettable. And I think Amber was mentioning about the understanding that comes from the community. And at Waikiki School, we're a habit of mind school. We would call that listening with empathy for understanding, one of Dr. Art Costa's. So our school is Habits of Mind, Dr. Art Costa, and P4C, Dr. J, and everyone who's part of that movement. So thank you for listening. I just love P4C. Thanks everybody for being here, so lucky. Ready? This is far! Woo!
Yeah. Hello everyone, it's great to be back. I've had community ball for a couple of years. My name's Jay. This circle is sometimes referred to as Kupo. I'm a philosopher graduate from here. We've got a PhD somewhere else and do cognitive science now. But I've been using P4C in my classes and my after-school programs and stuff in my work since then, which is really fun. But in our conversation, I wanted to focus on this sort of illumination that I know via practice but hadn't thought about explicitly. So coming here today really helped. Was sort of in using P4C and these kinds of experiences. It's quite terrifying when a student who you haven't heard from very much, it's very great to hear from them, brings in a traumatic story and sort of makes like dropping the mic in the classroom or something like this. It could derail things, it could re-traumatize people, it could give an energy to a room that you might not be ready for as a young educator. But at the same time, it does push past the sort of platitudes of standard education where you come into the class expecting to be regurgitating concepts or sort of engaging at the sort of news cycle level of reality, which is quite simplified. But in reality, all of our homes are quite complicated. Our lives are filled with immeasurable nuance, pain and joy and awkwardness and boredom. I like to talk about fidgeting or wiggling, the kind of like things that go on that psychology analysis really doesn't care about or tries to factor out. And so this provides sort of a tool for inviting, talking about the stuff that is not operationalizable, even if it's useless. Like, I fidget a lot. Fidget spinners and fidget toys are awesome. This is one of the reasons why this works so well in therapeutic context is that if you give someone something while they're talking, then they become more open to talking about what they're doing because part of their attention is disarmed by the big fluffy ball. So sneaky you are in the magical arts. But I think it's a really, really cool thing. And we talked about some examples talking in a sort of conservative environment and being able to talk about really, really polarizing political topics. Because in reality, and all throughout history, something like abortion might be polarized at the sort of what you talk about outside, but then when you talk about it within your family, you might realize, even if you're in a conservative family, maybe someone in your family got an abortion, and your family might have come up with an exception for them, but they would still push to talk about it in that external way. So you can discover that exception and engage in that level of reasoning as a result of this invitation. So, but it doesn't make it not horrifying. It's still, it's both, I think. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, sure.
Back. There you go. So I'm going to hand it off to Amber here, but I just to connect right off the bat with that, I think it's the really particulars, I think, that come up that really make things interesting. And I think that's worth remembering with all the narratives. Dr. J was reminding me of this too, is that, look, the student who, kind of said this, we don't know. Maybe she'd had a really bad experience. Maybe she had a bad experience. So I don't know. But in some sense, that's always the things that kind of are open to be then a new perspective, a new discovery, whether that's for oneself or in the group. So with that said.
Okay, we're just trying to dig deeper. So we started with one case study, and we're gonna move to the next one. It's in your handouts. And I thought I'd present a case that's a little bit different than what we typically do. A lot of our work is in schools and classrooms. I taught high school social studies for 10 years and used philosophy for children as the approach to teaching social studies. I actually taught psychology, high school psychology, using philosophy for children as an approach. I also do a lot of work doing philosophy for children with teacher candidates. We do it together so that they learn how to do it with their students. But I thought I'd share a narrative that had to do with an emergent P4C group that made its way into my life. So in 2016, a local writer, an older woman that lives here in Honolulu, reached out to the Academy to interview a group of us because the Dalai Lama was coming to Hawaii and was going to visit Kailua High School in recognition of the work that we've been doing with Philosophy for Children. So she wanted to meet with us to learn more about what is this thing, Philosophy for Children. And I got to know her through this interaction, and we built a friendship. And she invited me to come to her home one evening with a group of her friends so that they could learn more about Philosophy for Children. And so we're at this dinner at her home in Manoa, up in the valley. All of the women are in their 60s, 70s. They're learning about what we're doing in classrooms and schools, and one of them says, "Can you do this with us?" And I thought, why not? And for myself, it was more like wanting to try it in another setting, but it was also a little bit selfish because I thought about how much I would be learning from them by engaging in philosophical inquiry with women that were heading towards the end of their life, and they were seeking this as a tool to reflect on their experience and make sense of where they were at in their life. And so we would meet once a month. There was about 8 to 20 women on average in our groups. You'll notice it was 2016, so Trump got elected during this. This became a focus of many of our inquiries. And then we would rotate between their homes, and then eventually now we meet in Nu'uanu Park. So we bring our chairs, we sit in a circle, we bring our community ball, and we do an inquiry with one another. And we used to sometimes have a stimulus that we'd start, and then we'd generate our questions. Now they just come with questions that they wonder about. So I reached out to them. I said, we're going to be doing this panel. It's examining is there a connection between philosophy and therapy. And so I'm going to share a little bit of what they responded to me. So these are their actual words. And again, I'm inviting you to think about our question, therapeutic but not therapy, and you're going to have time to talk after I read through their responses. So the first thing I asked is, what drew you to join the Wise Women Philosophy Group? They weren't called the Wise Women in the beginning. This was a name that evolved over time. They shared with me, the word wise in our name is not a description of who we are, but rather an aspiration for who we hope to become. I joined the group in order to move away from the typical conversations that women and most people engage in, often fraught with personal updates or political venting. In witnessing Philosophy for Children conversations that Amber facilitated with children, I wondered if a group of bright adults might be able to use P4C to structure to experience deeper connections and richer listening. As it turns out, there's a real hunger to delve deeper, even though that mental muscle is notoriously underused, even by professionals who outwardly seem to be successful and highly evolved. I then asked them, what's been the impact of your participation in this group? They wrote, I came away from our conversations with a feeling of gratitude for the all too infrequent opportunity to think together. I also felt enriched knowing that I had learned or thought something I wouldn't have otherwise come across. Many of our wonderings have stayed with me, and permission to wonder is alive in a way that it wasn't before. I felt connected to this group in very meaningful ways. The impact has been a dual sense of excitement, seeing everyone and wondering what the topic might be, and a relief, a chance to relax into my own being when we meet. P4C is a place when I can surprise myself with my own thinking and intuitive process, a chance to appreciate the wisdom of other women and sometimes even my own wisdom. To this day, I still wonder about some of our inquiries. I wonder what it means to live a good life. And I still wonder if we need to come to some sort of understanding, acceptance, or story regarding our inevitable death. Over the course of several years, I recognized the community building, the normalizing of shared feelings, fears, unknowns, hopes, Shared beauty, sorrow, and shared humanity, the connecting and sharing of thoughts and emotions expands trust, enriches understanding, opens new inquiry, enhances compassion, and grows gratitude. I have met and formed new friendships through P4C. I've observed that through inquiry, many people find their voice, courage, and trust. Listening takes practice and needs one's full attention. Quieting your thoughts, yourself, and being present are what I'm so grateful for. Being taught by the philosophy and exemplified by the grace and guidance of Amber, as well as the group of philosophically inspiring and kind friends made in our gatherings of the P4C Wise Women is forever woven into the fabric of my life. For me, P4C changed my life profoundly, not just as a safe space for exploring questions and attitudes, but a place for making deep friendships with people who hungered for such opportunities. I'm far more settled and content than I was before the P4C connection was made. While I don't see it as therapy, P4C as therapeutic might just fit the bill. P4C opens new intellectual and emotional windows as we explore and discuss life's complexities on a personal, political, and broader basis. It adds such a rich dimension to my life. And these women are coming from a variety of backgrounds. Some have been stay-at-home wives their whole life. Some are business executives. None of them are coming from a philosophy background, but something about this called to them, and it's something that they keep coming back to over time. So given this particular case study of doing philosophy with women now in 70s and their 80s, I'm just coming back to the original question. Therapeutic, but not therapy? What do you think has been the transformative impact of philosophy for children with the Wise Women? So you can turn to a neighbor, talk, and then we'll have some time to share out loud.
I want to go to this story in particular, it's just really I think that they had, which is probably something that they've heard about this is one difference I realized. I don't know why here is that if you go to something that therapy does, therapy is just about helping things it's just about but something else therapeutic is about something else. It's an expressive object. If you ever helps a friend build something or fix something, that can be really good for you. Maybe also just for your friendship. But strictly speaking, you're not fixing yourself with another person, you're fixing whatever's going on. People, you're fixing the thing that is in both.
We have a program like this.
It's interesting because you said before it was I'm just so I wanted to use it to get deeper connections. Because the typical thought conversations are personal updates and political. But what's interesting though is that she said later in the presentation that it was about having deeper friendships and getting to know each other better. And it was about discussing things politically. So it's what was the difference? I think there was.
You're all listening. What's the
completely symmetrical one-on-one therapy is like, because one thing you can't say to a therapist is that you're not going to be building a relationship or friendship with that therapist. Like it's going to be like, but what's interesting though is I remember reading, I don't know how true this actually is, but a lot of therapy only works because of transference onto the therapist. So it only works because of feelings you have. Freud would say it's like but any kind of personal.
Well, I think one of the things about therapy, the idea
that's how therapy
is
works. Therapy utilizes
that's what the root of the word has to do with this idea.
That might be too easy, that's very but
I think
the idea is symmetrical.
Our wondering is why that
Even the facilitator, I think, was
All right, so we'd love to hear from some folks, a window into the conversation that you had, and you can build on what was shared before or something new that came up in your inquiry with your partner.
Thank you. I'm James McRae. I'm a professor of philosophy at Westminster College, and I had the good fortune of being part of P4C back when I was here between '99 and '06. So some people I recognize from back in the day, including Ben Lukey, who came in the master's program the same year I did, and so. But I don't know how many of you have read Lou Maranoff's book, Plato Not Prozac. Yeah, if you haven't, it's great. It's really worth reading. But in the state of New York, you can actually get certified to be a philosophical practitioner, and this is the case in other places as well. And health insurance will sometimes even pay for someone to see a philosophical practitioner, because some people really need a psychiatrist, right? Like if you're schizophrenic and you had a psychotic break, you need to see a psychiatrist. But a lot of people are just having existential issues that they're grappling with, and they find that philosophy is actually a lot more expedient in resolving those than necessarily going to a therapist. And so, being a good philosopher, as soon as the question came up, the first thing I did was look up the word therapeutic in the dictionary, and it gives two definitions, right? The second of which is of or relating to the treatment of illness. That's more what the therapist does. But the first of which is producing good effects on your body or mind. And I think in this sense, we're very much getting this body-mind change, right? So it's more of an existential thing. And Laura's over there. She was also in P4C. So, that's all I have to say. Who would like the community bowl? It's an exceptionally fluffy community bowl. They all spent some time with it.
I don't want it, I just want to touch it.
Now I have to say something.
You can give it to the neighbor.
Fluffy is great.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm Laura Medius, and I teach in Ohio at an extremely small college, and I'm coming back into here after many years, and so I have some problematic questions which I would like maybe help with from all of the experts. So my kids after COVID are unable to engage with one another. They will not use the toolkit. They go off into conversation. One person will speak, another person will take the conversation somewhere else. Another person will take the conversation somewhere else. Another person takes it somewhere else. And also, they would be afraid of the community ball because of passing sickness. And so in my environment, which is an extremely progressive, very small, very closed-minded, progressive environment, if one can imagine such a thing, where students are afraid of one or another's opinions, and they're all relatively traumatized or feel that way. I've found since COVID, I'm completely unable to do P4C style learning for lots of those reasons.
So I teach at a community college, well, for a couple of them in the Houston area, and I encountered the same issues when we started going back in person. And one of the things that I found was helpful was not just doing the style of P4C that we learned in Dr. J's classroom, but incorporating activities that are like group-based activities that require engagement on smaller scales, that are direct, that you develop that are directly related to applying like the lecture content or like the course content. So that gets them in this mindset I found of mediating between this is a school environment, but it's also a very open environment too. Right? So it gives some degree of structure to it. Structure to it by connecting it with the more formal lessons, and then they become a little bit more open since they're used to already engaging in that way in the more loose-goosey style that P4C really does encourage, and so you can get a little bit more of a cooperative by starting with something that's a little bit more structured.
Can you give one minute?
Okay, so when I teach in my ethics class, one of the papers that we go over is that when we go over feminist philosophy, feminist perspectives on ethics, is Sally Haslinger's social structural. What is a social structural explanation? And I have them watch pre-recorded lecture videos before class. That's part of my own style. And when they come in, we do a quick review of that connected to previous material. And then what I have them do is I break them up into smaller groups and ask them to sort of have like a list of 5 questions, right, for the groups to address. What is the general structure of this social apparatus, like healthcare or the prison system? What are the various roles or nodes, and how does this structure power relations and things like that? And then they'll get up and do little presentations on, okay, this is what we thought, and I'll ask the other groups do you have any questions or any thoughts on that? I don't like using the word criticisms, but yeah, like, can you push it? And then once all the groups have presented, I ask a further question of, okay, how do they all interact to each other to imply mutual constraints and change power relations in society more broadly? And that opens up into a more P4C style discussion across the course of the class.
Just keeping an eye on the time. So what I'm hearing is you're talking about like normalizing, this is how humans interact with one another, is by actually engaging in inquiry and dialogue and asking questions and thinking together, versus like just delivery of information and taking tests and things like that. And I guess when you first asked your question, one thing that struck me is that we live in an island state, and so we were teaching online way before COVID because it's the way that our neighbor island students have access to a university education. And we have done our darndest to have a constructivist philosophy for children practice that's done in an online setting. And so when COVID hit, there was a seamless transition from this pedagogy and the way in which we interacted in a face-to-face classroom setting that we continued online. And I'm even thinking about the Wise Women. They were like, let's do this online. We actually want to see each other more. And we've kept that constructivist process. So, and I don't know the context of your situation, but I think having that shared practice throughout a time period when there was social isolation and less time for us to be face-to-face, but we kept it up in an electronically mediated setting, there was no like break in the practice. And I think that was something that was particularly powerful here and able to like carry this forward. But again, I don't know your particular situation. Thanks for sharing. I'm gonna move us into the next case study so we can dig a little bit deeper. Therapeutic, therapy, philosophy for children. Toby.
Thank you, Amber. Hi. All right, I brought a team. Yep, go ahead. So our title is going to be of our section is going to be Finding the Therapeutic in the How of P4C Hawaii. Hawaii Youth and the Story of the Cheese Bracket. It's a combo of like whimsical and kind of serious. All right, now I want to start, I woke up at 4 o'clock this morning and decided, after being inspired by Mon's quotes from Lippmann and thinking of Dr. J this morning, I woke up this morning thinking of wonder, and I love this quote, which came from, I think, one of the thinking journals. It was republished in there. All facts, from stars to blades of grass, from the death of Caesar to the death of the mouse, are for wonder. And I just love that quote. It's like seeing the extraordinary in the ordinary, right? And who's really good at this? Who gets this? Well, children, for one. And here we have a quote from Lippmann, Matthew Lippmann, the founder of P4C. Children look at their fingernails and wonder where they come from. How does something like a fingernail grow from one's body? You do that, Rose? Like, look at your fingernails? But then everything about their body seems fascinating to them. Likewise, a snail is fascinating to them, or a mud puddle, or the dark spots on the face of the moon. So I was thinking, who else gets this? Well, I think travelers get this, right? Our P4C friends here we've been meeting with this week, and our philosopher friends saying, oh, it's so beautiful, you know, rainbows, ocean. I'm like, yeah, I guess you're right. And who gets this? Dr. J gets this. I say this with all love and kindness. Dr. J is one of the most childlike people I know, right? In that he gets it. He sees the extraordinary in the ordinary. Who doesn't get this? This is a story, a Nanette, not just a Nanette story, but a Waikiki school story. And I'm just going to go for it quick. She can tell you more detail later if you want, because she was at the front of this. But you know, schools have to get, the accreditation team comes in to like evaluate the school, see if they're up to standards, and I don't know what happens if you fail. But it's stressful. And this was, what, Nanette, maybe 2016? It was 2 times ago, something like that. Right? And they came in, and the school did a great job, you know, spearheaded by Nanette and Principal Bonnie Tabor, showcasing a lot of the wonderful things at the school, including P4C. And then we get to the end of the week, it's a faculty meeting, and the team, you know, external reviewers shares a report, and generally speaking is quite good. It's a glowing report, this is a great school, except for P4C. They're like, what is up with this P4C stuff? And we were a little upset. But we thought about it and we realized, oh, you know what it was? How about we go to the next one, Sarah? We didn't like prep them. When they were going class to class seeing P4C, they were focused on the topic of conversation. What the kids were talking about, right? And sometimes this was like Pokemon or something. And they're like, this is obviously off task. This isn't of instructional value. But what we should have prepped them is no, don't just pay attention to what the kids are saying. Pay attention to how they're thinking together, how they're relating to each other. Pay attention to the practice, right? Because that's at the heart of what we do. So not just the curriculum, but what that's being said, but the hidden curriculum, the how. So the accreditation team was distracted from seeing the full beauty and power of P4C because they were too focused on the topic. And you know, I was reflecting, again, 4 o'clock this morning, on who else didn't fully get it. Me. When I think back in my career, I didn't always get this. And part of my story, so some of you know this well, some of you, I mentioned it at the beginning, but I spent 20 years working in the Department of Education counseling, doing counseling. And for many of those, I was at a school, very high poverty, really a lot of issues. It was right in the middle of the crystal meth or ice pandemic that was sweeping through here. And I had tons of parents drug addicted. This is elementary school. I had tons of kids dealing with the worst trauma you can imagine. Like every month I would lose a kid, one of my kids, to Child Protective and Services. They'd be taken away. Literally, I saved kids' lives and I had kids die on my watch. So you name it. Worst kind of abuse you can think of. And so during those years, I had many, and subsequently since, I had many conversations about very heavy and traumatic things, right? Both in my individual conversations with students and in P4C discussions. And that in part is what led me, I call it Connecting P4C for lack of a better name, but combining social work with P4C, I kind of came up with an approach that sometimes I use with my top priorities to give not just kids, community members a space to talk about the things in their lives. And I realized if I had been up here 5 years ago, and it's good I is here, and Ben, because 5 years ago, I would have jumped on this opportunity and I would have barraged you with an overwhelming collection of stories of like kids in horrible trauma and like P4C conversations that were just like heartrending, right? Remember, you were my translator, right? When we did that in Japan, and those teachers were like, oh. Next one. But kind of my realization, and it's not that I don't see value in that what. It's got tremendous, beautiful value in having those spaces where those conversations can happen. But I realized when I shared those dramatic P4C stories, I was in a sense falling into the same trap as that accreditation team at Waikiki School. And thinking of what we said about wonder, right, at the beginning. I was distracting people from seeing the full beauty and power of P4C by focusing on dramatic topics of conversation. So I was engaging in sensationalism, probably with a bit of ego too, leading people to focus on what was less common, and in doing so, distracting them from the beauty that is found in the more common. I was failing to be like a child, a traveler, or Dr. J, those who have the fantastic gift of seeing that the ordinary is always imbued through and through with the extraordinary. All right, so yes, absolutely. Therapeutic can be found in the what of a P4C discussion. As we heard, Jessica was saying that so beautifully. Ben, many people have. We can talk about our trauma. But therapeutic, that's a tip of the iceberg, right? To me, therapeutic is also found in the how of a P4C discussion. We can embed therapeutic processes within the very structure of our practices. And if people like me tend to focus on the wrong thing, I thought we'd bring a couple people who get it right. So Sarah is 13 and has been been doing P4C with me for 5 years. Sam is 16 and has been doing P4C with me for 10 years. And my question for you two now, it's your turn. I get a break. Think beyond what we've talked about and reflect on how we've practiced together. What impact has P4C had on you? What has our practice meant to you? Then I turn it over to you guys.
So yeah, like you said, I've been in P4C for like basically my whole life. So it's definitely had like a huge impact on my life. And like how he was saying, I'm really thankful for yes, there were topics that were really interesting to me and we talk about really serious stuff sometimes. But also for me personally, what was even more crucial for me to always have like a place that was like always there, like every week I would come back. And even in like the seemingly like mundane or like boring, not boring, but like not as like deep conversations, it was still like really important to me because of the how that laid in. And yeah, it really helped me a lot with my confidence a lot, and especially when I was younger, I was a lot more shy. So it helped me a lot with that. And I think I think a lot of times to like help kids, we try to like push them to become a certain version because we want them to succeed in their future. But I think P4C gave me the space where I could think for myself of who I wanted to be, and not just like what I thought other people wanted me to be. So P4C really gave me a space to think that for myself, and it provided me a place where listening was just as important as talking, which I think is something that's not always appreciated. And it gave me a place to just like be myself, and a place where I didn't have to try to like chase that idealized version of myself I thought people wanted me to be. So yeah, it really helped me with that, and it helped me to slow down and, like he says, Dr. J says, like not be in a rush, and it helped me to think about things more thoroughly and think about my own opinions on things. So yeah, I really appreciate it, and I'm really thankful that it gave me a place where listening was enough, and it gave me a place where my own thoughts and beliefs were enough, and it gave me a place where I was enough. Thank you. Sarah.
So, P4C has affected me greatly over the course of my life in many ways. It has developed me as a person, both emotionally and mentally, and for that I'll always be grateful. But the way I feel it has impacted me the most is not something personal to me, but something that provides for everyone: community. P4C manages to walk the fine line of respectful yet personal, intellectual yet emotional, challenging yet able to maintain a sense of companionship and solidarity. It is able to provide a safe space where the differing of ideas is not only accepted, but embraced, and even then are only presented respectfully. When someone is disagreeing with something you said, you always know that they are disagreeing with the opinion, not the person. P4C does not only give me a chance to present my ideas without fear of ridicule or mocking, it also provides me a safe haven. When I arrive at P4C, I know that I no longer have to worry about how I act or how I'm perceived. I know that I will be valued as myself, not someone who I have to pretend to be. You will always know that at P4C, you'll be respected for who you are. There's no need to change yourself to fit into a particular group, or look a certain way to fit into a particular clique. It is a unique place in which different people with a variety of interests come together to not only practice philosophy, but experience a special sense of community that can only be developed once every person feels they can be their own true self. So if you notice these pictures that I've attached to my slideshow, not a single one of them are us physically doing the act of philosophy. They're all just us hanging out and having fun and just being kids. Because at the end of the day, we are just kids. We're kids who may talk about concepts like death and world hunger and poverty, but we're also kids who decided to dedicate almost 2 whole hours to dinner time so we can just socialize and have fun together. A sense of community and compassion and, sorry, I'm forgetting my words, and companionship is so deeply intertwined with the foundations of P4C that even when you're not physically practicing philosophy, the feeling still persists and remains. So how has P4C impacted me? What has it provided me? It has given me a safe place that I can call my community, my family.
All right. I don't need to add anything to that. So now we get to our case study. So it's the story of the cheese bracket. P4C Hawaii Ohana is a mixed age outreach group of students from different schools and backgrounds who share a special love for P4C. Some of the older students have been members of the group for the entirety of its 10 years of existence. They have done P4C together for approximately 1,000 hours and have had hundreds of discussions about topics that are conventionally considered to be philosophical. But what is one of the students' all-time favorite discussion topics? It's from the summer of 2022. It may well be the cheese bracket. Inspired by college basketball's March Madness tournament, this inquiry aimed to answer a single question: what cheese is the best? This discussion turned into a multi-session and multi-year deep dive into the world of cheese that continually challenged the students to think well and to relate well. What criteria define best? What are the reasons and evidence to select Parmesan over cheddar? And how does one listen with an open mind and respectfully interact with someone who believes that cotija is actually better than brie? Cheese too. So, that's one, I think. Yeah, so you can talk about whatever the heck you want to talk about, but I just threw out this one. Was the cheese bracket therapy, was it therapeutic? And Jimmy kind of gave us a head start on that one. And what might you do to embed therapeutic processes within your teaching practice? So enjoy talking to each other.
In tournament, in multi-game tournaments, where you have about 8 people on each side, two teams. Yeah. The bracket is just the way they structure the tournament. Yeah. So I think that would be, that would have to be it. That would be, you said it was 5 tournaments?
it's not just selected by people want to. Yeah. You should what more your favorite. I think it's kind of therapy of because we share what we like, what we love. With movement. We're sharing a kind of identity or
You know, I heard this once, I think from who, it wasn't related. Someone said, celebrity, saw it in an interview. He goes, I love small talk. People are like, why do you like small talk? Small talk means that you're conversation. Someone that doesn't know very well about their life. Because most people hate small talk. Even I do. I can get impatient because, especially here at the university, I'm thinking about eating happiness. When I walk in, someone's like, well, I'm not today. I'm like, yeah, no. Like, you know. So I get impatient. He goes, because it's never about the weather. It's never about the weather. You're talking to other people by talking about the weather. If someone says, like, oh man, I hate the weather today, man. I hate it so hard. Like I always feel like I'm being like overwhelmed by weight promoting by heat. And telling somebody about yourself. And then the other person's like, well, I love you. Like, not only are you you're expressing yourself in a certain way, you're offering different things to the same phenomenon. I don't know. I'm wondering if that's
that is like open the iceberg.
Yeah, and that helps the lower part.
We'll bust out the full pack. Yeah, please, one person at a time. Okay, maybe we'll just take one, maybe two, because I don't want to cut into Dr. J's time here. Okay, anyone want to share? Yeah, what's something that you and your partners came up with that you thought you want to share out? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ethan, and this is Seth, and we talked about one thing about this question is it's fun. You know, who doesn't want to talk about cheese? So maybe, I don't know, I wondered about if they're vegans or lactose intolerant people. But anyway, we talked about it as therapeutic in the sense of it's exercising the skills of doing philosophy, and it can get deep very fast, as Seth was saying, that you could think about, like you said, what do we mean by best, or what do we mean by cheese, or can you evaluate preferences for things? And so it does, and then you can use those as an inquiry to get you to something else. Although I do want to know what the best cheese is, to be honest. So yeah, so that's a little bit. Do you want to add more?
Sure. Seth also. I think one of the things that is so lovely about this and about the P4C avenues generally is that it reveals just how much our thoughts and language and communities connect everything to everything else. And provided we have the care, the intellectual safety, the openness, the inquiry, the creativity, all the virtues that can be cultivated in this, we find ways to get into depths with anything. No matter how picayune it is, no matter how simple, it has the opportunity with the power and creativity of a community, including discussions about cheese, as important as that is, because it goes into those depths and does that. So, those things.
Do we do one more short one? Oh, yeah.
So it is anyway therapy. Doesn't matter. Is it about cheese or is it about friendship? So important that the process, because it's a feeling of community. It is intellectual joy of talking. It is a respectful talking. And all of these things makes a therapy effect, in my experience. So maybe if it's a question about like more deep things like friendship, feelings, something like it could be more therapeutic maybe, but it could be even about table and cheese, but all with dialogue culture generally.
You know, I was thinking, Julia, as you were talking, you know, when I did my PhD dissertation on P4C, I very much focused on the instrumental value of community. in that having that community really helped the inquiry go, right? But then as I got into the counseling, I more appreciated the intrinsic value of it, right? Everyone needs to be heard, everyone needs to be accepted, everyone needs a place where they feel like they belong. And one of my joys is seeing that happen. And we never finished, I don't think we ever finished the cheese bracket. We got to the final, so we gotta finish that up sometime. Quick question, what were the final two? Do you remember? I don't remember.
Cotija.
Cotija and cheddar? Okay. Tija. Okay.
Do we want
All
to
right.
vote as a group?
We will have, you cheese lovers, we'll have a discussion after hours, but I want to turn it over to Dr. J now.
Does it have to incorporate those patterns and kind of see the meaning in these patterns? No. Exit. Yeah.
Well, hi. I think one of the reasons I drive lots of people nuts, including my wife, is that I never know in advance what I'm gonna do or what I'm gonna say. But somehow it works out. Shortly before we were married, I did something and she just said to me, "You're incorrigible." And I thought, oh no, and I didn't know what the word meant. So I looked it up and it said, nothing can be done. So she's German. So I said, Austria, are you telling me something here? I looked it up and she said, I'm German, you're just gonna be a lot of work. So unfortunately, I keep making that point with her. Okay, so there were several things in response to what we just did. And let me just put these out to you folks. About P4C generally, I think, it begins with an experience. We are not in a rush. It begins in an experience. And the first time I saw it was at Montclair. I'm going to mix in what I say because I only have 20 minutes, right? Okay. I said, any questions? And so, yeah, I love to make noises. And a couple people said, gee, are you going to do the duck? But I don't know if I'm going to do the duck. Mature people coming. So of course, now that, as I've traveled around the world, is my test for whether the child is still alive in you or not. And it even made an audience of Germans smile. So it was a great start. Okay, so anyways, it begins in an experience. And my experience with P4C, well, that's in my, maybe what I'm gonna do is jump around, because if I give this thing, it'll be 2 hours probably, because we're not in a rush. And each of the things, when I think about them, there's a book, Thinking Fast and Slow, I think that's the title. How many of you know that book? Okay, and if in a safe place you can say, I didn't do the homework. Okay, I have no idea what it is. But it really sums up, I think, one of the problems is conflict with not being in a rush. And so, coming into school, gotta have this done, gotta have that done. And the fast rush that kids in the entire world in, they now know is sort of the reptilian part of the brain. It's just, yeah, fast, fast, fast. And what's suffering is the frontal lobe, where if you're gonna think about deep things, if you're gonna really consider and be thoughtful, that's what will activate the frontal lobes. But that happens more and more rarely. I think, yeah, wow. So when we say we're not in a rush and people say, wow, how do you do that? Well, I think of P4C, there's a Hawaiian pu'uhonua, and the word pu'uhonua refers to a refuge, a place of refuge. On the Big Island, there's a pu'uhonua. In the days of the king, or the ali'i, if you did something wrong, like really wrong, and were going to be killed for it, if you made it to the Big Island, and you got to the pu'uhonua, it was a refuge. Now it gives me chicken skin the first time I heard this. So much of Hawaii has impacted my being here. But P4C, that community is a place of refuge. It's a place of refuge. And the things that I wanted to insert in there is when you're thinking about a community, we now talk about a beginning, an emerging community, and a mature community. And it's very important that you embrace that. Because if you see P4C and you think, I want to do that, I want to do that, and you jump into it, and it just doesn't work, well, that's what a beginning community is all about. But I often refer to many of the things I've learned from Toby, for instance. And he says that P4C, if you really, I want to explore this a little more. Maybe I'll do a workshop, something with that Chad and Amber do, and we all do, I think, in the classes. And so you do it, you do the plain vanilla and all that kind of stuff. So you do this is what it tells me to do, and that works. But as you do it, it really gets inside of you. And as Toby eloquently puts it, it becomes who you are. It becomes who you are. Now, one of the gifts that I've had, I realized that it's 40 years in August that I had my first encounter with P4C. Okay. So these are things I think have in mind as you go along. There's a beginning community, and there's no time on that. You might go ahead, what you're struggling with, you might go the whole year. And I taught in an inner city, and it was, whoa. And on that one, there are two books that I have my students read in the class. One of them is called We've All Got Scars. We've All Got Scars. And it was a study by someone at Harvard University in studying the students who were coming to her. Now this is Harvard. We've all got scars. And another one that I have them read is called Wounded by School. So when I have an intro philosophy class, and we're, initially I have make a name tag and we do this community ball thing because they've all got scars, and this is so weird. What they have internalized is what their role is, and it's brutal to see it take place. Because I came through university. Most of my initial 12 years, I think, was 1 through 6. It's thanks to Amber and to Chad that it made it into high school. It was one of the limitations with Lippman's work. Middle school, no, it didn't work. High school, no, it didn't. And it's beautiful what it is, but oftentimes the teacher says, no, we're being told to do this. We're being told, we don't have time to do this. Okay. So that's the first thing. So I'll listen to your lecture. I'll take notes. Am I going to ask a question? I don't know how it is where you guys are, but I had a colleague and we thought, what is this? And our theories were students here develop heavy hands. And I thought it was a fear of, deodorant failure. I'm not going to raise my hand, but it's just, no, that's not the rule. If I raise my hand down in some of the schools, you raise your hand, yeah, you're the smart one. I'm not going to raise my hand, because there's a single answer thereafter. And so, if I know the answer, depending on the social content of that classroom or the energies, boy, am I gonna take it in the face if I actually, oh, we know what that's like. So, you don't ask questions, you take notes, and what do? You seen Peanuts on television? Because in Peanuts, okay, the classroom situation is, and what comes next? The kids are explaining to the kids what the adult just said. And think sadly that's in a way what the lecture thing is all about. So what are the things I have to remember to get a grade? What do I have to do to get an A? So that's what they come in with. And so to do this is really a kind of, what would you call it? I know it's therapeutic once they, but this is something to get over. It's okay. It's okay to do this. The community will facilitate that and so on. Now the next thing I want to say, a couple things from Matt Lippman, of the many things. When you talk about, oh, I just got so emotional. Oh, it was so powerful. Now, Matt said, and I also feel this way, that we all have sort of a protective screen. So if something comes in, bounces off. And as it starts to get a bit more serious, and that's, I want to just say how incredibly important it is, if you're the facilitator, to have your finger on the pulse of, is this safe? Is this safe enough? Because you don't know in advance what people have been through. And a couple of folks have shared what the kids who come in, you don't know. And if I don't speak English, can I raise my hand? Because I don't understand what's being said. And one of the terrifying things is, I don't understand. I never said that going to graduate school, because I didn't want people to know that I didn't know. So the safety is something that's absolutely fundamental to what we're trying to do. So that's the next thing. It might be on the very first class, in the very second class, that somebody says something that's just, where'd that come from? Now, I can feel I'm jumping around, but things sort of jump in for me at the right place. So here's one that happened at Sacred Hearts Academy. Okay, it's school for girls, and it wasn't all that far into it. We were doing something from Pixie. And Pixie talks about her arm fell asleep. And then she's thinking, geez, how could part of me be asleep? Brilliant what things there are in these novels. How could part of me be asleep? Did you ever wonder about that? Okay. Well, so we were doing an exercise then. He's got some wonderful exercises, and this is about belonging. And so it starts out with, do your books belong to you? And then you find out what they think. If they're library books, what do you think? Okay, now what about your room? And then where you start to learn from the kids. And, well, it depends, because, you know, at my place, 3 of us sleep in the same bed. So that's our room, not my room. So you learn about, and so the next thing is, if you have pets, do you have responsibilities? There's a goldfish, can you just, and because they understand that in advance, we don't know where it's gonna go. We don't know where this community, these inquiries are gonna go. So, well, and then if it's a pet, well, yeah, you do have some responsibility. And what about your own body? Do you have responsibilities to your own body? And one of the girls says, oh my goodness, I guess my daddy shouldn't be touching me there, should he? And over, the power and the empathy that children have was they instantly recognized that there was something so fundamentally wrong with that. And the empathy just poured from them. So when we talk about a beginning, an emergent, and a mature community, there is this empathy that develops in the community because you're hearing them. Okay. So what Matt said about this that I think is important to remember, that a really good session will move between its being abstract general, that the philosophers love, and we do, you know, some friendship, this about belonging, that's pretty abstract, but it'll move between abstract general. Remember what he used to say? This is a quiz, that's not fair to you. Stop that, Dr. J. Okay? And the profoundly personal. The profoundly personal. And I would say it's safe to say that many, if not most people, don't realize that's gonna happen. But as you get into a safe community, we've all got scars. And depending on how the scarring, at some point, it's gonna come out. Okay. I have, we have these different magic words, we call them, in some of the letters, like LMO, let's move on. You might be feeling that right now. Okay, Dr. J, we got that good LMO, please. It is one of my favorite. I don't understand it. I wish I'd had that in school and we could all have said that. Oot, OOT. And I want you to say that with me at the count of 3, okay? 1, 2, 3. Oot. It's so great to do that. I used to have 100 students in lesson. I said, okay, guys, I want to hear it all again. And they go, ooh. And students come in and look at the door. What do you got, cattle in there or something? Sort of interrupt their program of what a professor is supposed to be like. I feel like I'm a walking koan. How do you do that? How do you do that? Okay, so one of the things that occurred to me today, and this is probably the 9th sort of version that I have of what I was going to say. I have just thought about it. So the new list of letters that came to me is a WIP. WIP stands for, we're all WIPs, works in progress. Okay, and that's so hard as well. We're works in progress. And so I think, next week. Yeah. And one of our dear faculty members, Masato. Yeah, I think of Mitsio. Masato. And he spent hours with me at Waikiki Elementary with the kids and loved it. Just loved it, he said. So he uses some of the techniques in his statistics class. And I went in there for a session, and they're just joyous. Just joyous because he's so playful. With formula and stuff, he'll go up to the board, he does a lot of research. Now, what happens when people see something that they don't understand? What is it, dilates? It shrinks down, so they're squinting. So one of the things you gotta do is open your eyes. So he has them come up and, f of x, that thing, I flunked calculus. Okay, so I remember it was an f of x, and it's just like that. So he has them come up to the board and says, come on, let loose. Because they're terrified of formula and so on. Am I almost out of time? 5 minutes, okay. Okay, so in short, if I had longer time, there were basically 3 points that I wanted to bring together. And I'm going to give you a very brief summary of what those are. The first one is philosophy. Now, I have philosophy. That's one of them. The second one is children. And the third one, how would you pronounce that? You got it. You got it. Okay, do that again. Now, can you think of a time recently where you went, is this guy for real? What are we going to do for lunch? Now, this sound I found traveling around the world seems almost universal. Now, this is a sound, audible translation of the word wonder. Okay, wonder. I wonder where I left my keys. Am I gonna get busted for? Now, I thought, because I looked at the first timetable for this event, that we were gonna be from 3:30 to 5:30, like yesterday. And that was what was in the schedule. Now, the toolkit? I just assumed Soon, if you ever hear a kid says, soon, you'll know they had Dr. J, because let's make it playful. Okay, I assumed that the schedule was going to stay the same. So what was it, 12:20, 1:20? 1 o'clock, so 12:20 or something. I get this call, Dr. J, where are you? Well, I was going through the PowerPoint, and I kept changing stuff. And, well, it's at 1 o'clock. Holy bleep. Holy bleep. My wife said, you want me to drive you? Yeah, you better drive me. Okay. And that's part of the way, and I was making yet more changes. Because we are a work in progress, and so about wonder, that's the pivotal, or the three, that's the triad, or the trio. So what I want to just put out to you guys is I'm very uncomfortable with the word philosophy. Very uncomfortable with it. And the reason is it means so many different things. And when you say philosophy for children, or philosophy with children, when this got started, Matt thought that philosophy departments would be a wonderful source because philosophers could go out and spread this. They weren't interested at all. Not at all, okay? This isn't philosophy. They can't do philosophy. Okay. So, I went off to Montclair and spent 3 weeks. It changed my life. And at the end of it was fun. I mean, we had such a so this thing about therapeutic, I realized there was so much therapeutic during that week, changing in a fundamental way that I thought about teaching and about philosophy and all of that. And the last day of the last week, the platform, they brought these kids out, put them on a circle, and they did a plain vanilla. So read a little bit, and then like, what do you wonder about? And I was like, epiphany. You know the word epiphany? That's really strong. I mean, I'm thinking, oh my God. The Dalai Lama has a book, Flash of Lightning in the Dark of Night. And if you can feel my passion now, that's the way I felt. This is it. This is it. If every child in the world could have this experience, what a different world. So I came back to Hawaii determined to make it happen here. One of the gifts to me is look what's happened. It's not me, it's just people see this and think, yeah, that's it. So children, I realized when I started reading with children, do I have 2 minutes?
2 minutes.
2 minutes. Okay.
Always 2 minutes.
Always 2 minutes. Damn it. This might be 2.5 or 3. But this is going to bring together a lot about children and what I've learned from children every week, every day for like K through 5. I go class to class to class to class. And I learn so much, starting with kindergarten and first grade. I think one of the problems is adults want to come in and fix them. They want to fix them. And it makes me uncomfortable. Oh, we're going to learn how to give reasons, children. Okay, everybody going to do reasons. So I'm working in a school and I'm beginning to learn about this. So I'm with these kids and I'm thinking, toolkit. I want to teach about giving reasons. Doesn't that sound like a good lesson plan? Okay, so I come in and I say, boys and girls, what's your favorite TV program? Aren't I clever? And they said, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So then I said, how come? Because aren't I clever? They're going to have to say, because da-da-da-da-da-da-da, right? I was so full of it. No, I was full of misconceptions. Misconceptions about children, for instance, and what they're doing, what they're thinking. Okay, so Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. How come? And they look at me bewildered. So I say, how come? Again, because because? And finally, with exasperation, they said, because it's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And and when they realize you're not an adult, you're not here to teach something to them, but you genuinely, deeply want to know what they think. So I thought, whew. Now if you've got big P stuff, you've ever heard of a self-evident truth? Okay? I think in geometry, there's certain self-evident truths. Okay? That's how you start. Well, I'm realizing that, children aren't philosophers. Go in and spend some time. Because already they have certain truths are self-evident. You haven't have a reason for that? Sorry, friend. No. So we do that one. Next question, it was a thing about what's real. So it says, are fairy tales real? Now, in your own mind, what do you think a child's going to say? How many of you think it's yes? And I'm raising my hand because yeah, this is easy. Okay, now you're suspicious. I know. I know what this is. This is philosophy, man. I'm going to raise my hand. No way, no way. Well, I thought it was going to be yes. Unanimous no. Okay. Now again, I want to share with you, I'm entering into what I'm going to call the place of not knowing. The place of not knowing. And it's a not knowing, I know but you don't. It's like, I have no idea why it would be that way. Okay. So the next thing, I'm a little bit, wow, fairy tales aren't real. And now this isn't real. So I reach down, there's a chair there. And, boys and girls, is this chair real? No. Now they are worried about me. Now you laugh, but it's not funny to them. And they sensed that I was really puzzled. I was really puzzled because I'm thinking, what could it be? What could it be? And they have the answer to why those things aren't. So I'm thinking, okay, and I mean genuinely, they're a little bit concerned in a powerful way. So, okay, what could it be? What could it be? So finally I said, so think about it this way. If I'm in a world and these kinds, I went up to the board. Is this, no. What could it be that makes something real? So then I thought, is a doggy real? Yes. So I think, I've got a clue. So then I'm thinking, if I live in a world where what's real is defined by whether you're living or not, what would be a problem in that world? Is a mango real? I bet you guys are you're coming in for the next session?
No.
Oh, sounds interesting. Okay. You guys think a mango is real? A mango.
That mango is what?
Real.
Oh, real?
Yeah. See, that's because...
Which one? The one that I ate? The one I ate is real.
Okay, but I'm talking about, I asked that question, we're trying to determine with a group of kindergartners, what do they think of as real? So then they just, after some together, is a mango real? Okay, and so, because living was what they came to, the doggies are real. So is a mango real? So now they got this puzzled look on their face. And the kid says, wow, when it's on the tree, it's real. They didn't talk about the variety, but that was probably in there. So finally somebody says, do you mean when you take a mango off a tree, you're killing it? No. So from that experience, and others like it, and there are many more I could share with you, learning that part of, to me, the gift of this is not worrying, is it philosophical or not? I think that is really a scary thing. We all haven't, when we use the word philosophy, we know in the bandwidth. Now I bet there's some, there was a
Go ahead, sorry.
Okay, there used to be a program on television and this hook would come up and, so I feel, I'm gonna be done. So, but children, there was a teacher at Sacred Hearts Academy and she did this for a little while and then she came out, running out to me and she says, Dr. J, you know something? And I'd been going there for a while. She said, full of this, we seriously underestimate what children are capable of. Now, you laugh, but I think when you really feel safe, when people feel safe together, teachers will tell you from the heart. Okay? So here she's seriously we reduce them to the level of the worksheets and the things we have them read. And I'm feeling the energy pouring out of her and thinking, wow, we reduce them to the stuff we give them, worksheets, etc. And I'm seeing slowly the way she was. It was like spontaneous eloquence just pouring out of her. So when I'm in that circle with those children, it's like I'm on an intellectual avalanche. And she got quiet again, and she said, and that's okay, isn't it? You know, now this is, we're out in front of a Catholic school, and I can't go up and sit here, you know, I love hugging. You know, I think in a past life I was in Brazil because, and in Hawaii, you know, you can hug people. Males can hug males, females, whatever. We love to make in a hug. So, but I constrained myself and thought I'm not gonna hug. So, do any of you guys know Elmer Fudd? Okay, because we used to go to cartoons every Saturday morning when I was a kid, and this is the way it ended. There you go, and that's all, folks. Okay, thank you very much, and you can see that.
So it's not all.
It's what?
That's not all. Because we wanted to leave at least a few minutes again for people, if they have, to come back again to the theme of the panel, but open it up to any other questions. Laura had one earlier. I think we touched upon it, but we can also follow up on that and a lot of other things. But to open it up, other questions, because we run into our break period now, but we'll also have 2 more full days of the conference. So even if we don't get to answer questions now, if people have things that they want to ask or address, yeah, have to save time for that. So, I see Joshua back there.
We've talked about this a long time ago, but I'm curious, particularly given we haven't seen each other for a while, to hear more how we think about this. What is a mature community? What's it look like? What does it do? How does it sustain itself? You've talked about moving into it, but what is it?
No, we're not answering.
At the break.
Yeah, exactly. Just this is like we're looping back to almost like the beginning of the plain vanilla process, where you get to put questions out,
and it
doesn't automatically get voted for just because But the conference ends up being a kind of mutual. Oh,
that's
we
our
cluster
board.
around this
Okay.
question. Yeah. So.
There is a short answer.
Oh, these are my skepticals. So yeah, sorry.
Some people I work with and I have been thinking recently about what kinds of philosophical questions tend to be more present for young children versus older children, adolescents, young adults, and then continuing into middle age, old age. I was really thinking about Amber's presentation too. So that's just something I've been thinking about.
Okay, taking the ball so light is sometimes hard to get across the whole room. A few things I want to say. First of all, great presentations. I know this was not the normal sort of presentation, but I since everyone in here had some experience with philosophy for children, this has given us all slightly different perspectives. I did want to touch on Jim's point because Lou Marinoff also came out with a book after that called Philosophical Practice, which is sort of a how-to guide going through it. Now, that doesn't certify you, but it is a very interesting read for anybody who wants to put their philosophical tools into one-on-one pragmatic situations. But what I really want to bring up is something that's come up a lot, and this came from Laura's question of how to get the students engaged, but other things, and it comes down to something that was mentioned somewhat in passing here, but I know it's a key part of the P4C tradition, and that is the intellectual safety. But in terms of the intellectual safety, normally we focus on making sure the students feel safe to speak, feel safe to have their voices heard. But the thing that I'm recognizing in all of this, the thing that is therapeutic about P4C, and why most people go to therapy, is to feel heard, is to feel somebody is listening to you without judging you, and actually going to reflect back on what you say. And so what I think is sort of, a key part of it that hasn't been mentioned is that in addition to teaching students how to think, we are teaching them how to listen respectfully. Just like we all want to be listened to empathetically, it's very hard to do that unless we know how to listen to others empathetically. And so for me, that is a key part of establishing that intellectually safe community. So to the answer, what is a mature community? To me, it's when the whole class feels intellectually safe with each other and that they can feel letting out those inner secrets or those inner traumas without feeling that they're judged and knowing that it's a safe space to do so.
I just want to build on that really quick, and it's related to what Jessica said, because I think that that P4C is very systematic, and there are key practices, just like a therapist has, that you learn over time that you come back to and reinforce. And I like the idea of intellectual safety. Like when I'm doing this with kids, I'm constantly coming back to that's a ground rule of the whole experience. And if it isn't safe, then it's going to be hard for us to move forward. So I would almost challenge that idea that like when we're doing this, you're in the moment. And I think that's what good therapists, good teachers, good artists are able to let go and be present in the moment and use everything. But it is also very systematic, and there are procedures that we use in order to keep the boundaries to make it safe, right? And that's like why people enjoy learning how to swim in a pool, is because it has a border around it and you can always go to the wall to hang on. And I think that's part of what we do as facilitators of philosophy for children, is we create that border in order to like emerge in our thinking and our ability to be fully human with one another. So that was just something I was thinking about in terms of, because I think the safety part is critical, and I think we have so many systems for ensuring that.
Ooh, I like that pool one. And I know we got like 1 minute, real quick, the mature community one, I just want to put in a plug for the coveted last session of the conference, 3:30 Friday session. These guys and 10 of their friends will be there, and if you want to see a mature community, we're actually gonna do P4C together and dive in some Hawaiian philosophy and some counseling stuff. So you should probably put in a plug too.
You distract me. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, yes. Plug. I'll plug. Okay, fine. Just because he prompted me. Yes, tomorrow morning there's 2 really good sessions. You are gonna have to make a choice. There's many good sessions. 2 that I'm posting. So myself, my good colleague Aya are presenting about our work in Japan. My friend Shelley and other colleagues are presenting about doing kind of work in prisons and talking about the communities, big and small, that we participate in. So if you're a morning person, see you at 8. But I was going to come back and add on a question to leave with, particularly with this topic, and that's to add 2 more fuzz to our philosophy. And that was to think about fun and fear, right? When Laura was asking a question, I've been thinking about, look, and it's really what Josh mentioned, we all have fears that keep us from feeling like we can speak or that we are going to be listened to. And to Mon's point, those fears change, right? They can be idiosyncratic, but they're also generalizations. Like, I have different fears now of saying in different contexts in my 40s than I did when I was in my teens and so on. And I think that's true, particularly for every different environment, is to think about what those are and what we do, the systems that we use to kind of address those in our communities. But then also then the role of, what do we mean by fun, right? Because I think that is part of the thing that goes hand in hand to address these kind of reluctancies to speak or to listen, honestly. So I'll leave it with that. Thank you, everybody, for your attention this afternoon, and we're headed into break time, so hopefully conversations continue, and as I said, we got 2 more full days. So.